we start, I'm gonna work. I'll give it to you in advance, and then I'll ask it again. They'll never hear my question because we don't use them on television. But he wants to know: do you remember when we started calling ourselves black? And how did you grow into that? And, how do you think black people grew into that?
Mm-hmm.
So, do you remember when we started calling ourselves black and how we grew into that?
Roughly, yeah.
Tell me about how you grew into it.
Well, I grew into it because...
give me the full sentence. I grew into calling myself black.
I grew into calling myself black because I was aware of what was involved in the change, both from my own feelings inside and also from understanding what the historical context was. Those who are around remember that Malcolm X made the term Negro rather unpleasant for us, and he kept pounding away on so-called Negroes. He himself indicated by his own name that he certainly wasn't a Negro. He didn't know who he was. He was an X, but at least there was a certain honesty in that. And Malcolm's pounding away at us, made us examine what did we meant by the term Negro. It also made us aware that we did need a change of name. Negro was a title that did have a specific relevance and meaning at a certain historical phase in our struggle in America. We needed something else. Now in '64, along comes Stokely Carmichael, and he starts talking about a relatively new concept, black power. And I was amazed at the response the terms got. And upon reflection, I can understand why. America has always looked upon black as potentially frightening, no matter what else they feel about it. And to some degree, America still feels that something in the black thing is scary. Stokely combined black, which was a frightening concept, with power. Oh God, that's too much. So everybody tended to sort of run away from black. But the more people ran from it, the more we thought, hey, this shakes things up. So we will no longer be Negroes, we'll be black. But even the term black has its own place in the historical struggle. Now we are looking for a new definition. We call ourselves now African Americans. And as long as there is a contradiction between how we define ourselves and how we are defined by white America, we will keep looking for that definition that satisfies both us and them. We haven't found it yet. I don't think African American is the final answer. It serves a need. It moves us closer to our goal, but we're going to call ourselves something else.
And that's entirely different from our identity because
we've known who we are, but how do we present who we are so that the rest of the world will respect us for who we are?
Okay, let's stop down now.
Okay. Crystal? Yes.
Okay.
Okay, straight out.
You told me.
Sit back, please.
Sure. You told me you first became aware of the nation and of Malcolm through a film called The Hate That Hate Produced.
Mm-hmm.
Describe your reaction to that documentary. It's 5960 or so.
Mm-hmm.
Tell me about that.
Well, I don't remember very much about the documentary, except that young man with his flaming, well, it wasn't red hair, lean and gaunt, and quite capable of using language to open wounds. I was amazed at his capacity to communicate and at the naked honesty with which he expressed his feelings about black people, about white people. He scared me. I'm sure he intended to. But certainly after I saw him in The Hate That Hate Produced, I knew that I would never forget this man. Now, I had known a little bit by reading and other things that there was, the black Muslims. I had heard about them in general terms, but it was that film that brought it into focus. Plus the fact that Rube and I knew Louis Lomax. I had grown up as a boy in Georgia in the same town that Louis came from and knew his family and his uncle. And we also got to know Mike Wallace on a personal basis. and they talked to us about what was happening, behind the scene and everything like that. But the film did make an impact on everybody, and it introduced Malcolm to a national audience, which gave him a great opportunity, which he took full advantage of.
Now, do you recall your first encounter with this lean, gaunt man?
Yeah, I do. I do indeed. Ruby and I had been invited in 1968 to come to a platform in front of the Teresa Hotel in Harlem where we were going to celebrate with the NAACP the 8th anniversary of the 1954 Supreme Court decision. And, no, it was 64, I think it was. Yes, it was 64. And we sat on the platform, but for some reason, nobody was permitted to speak. There was a tremendous furor in the people who gathered. And when the regular speakers got up, Roy Wilkins and others, everybody booed and made us all sit down. I think I even got up and tried to say a word that was booed roundly. In other words, that rally came to naught. As we were leaving the platform, I was aware of several young men standing, and they were neat and they were clean and they had the haircut and all, and I knew that these were black Muslims. And I thought that it was the black Muslims who had organized the disruptions. So I spoke to one of the brothers and said, well, you and Malcolm, you've done it. You've, disrupted the rally. He said, oh, no, brother. No, that wasn't us. That was Malcolm. That was someone else. We don't disrupt rallies. And I was rather impressed by that. I said, I better check this out. Meanwhile, Ruby's brother got to know the Muslims very well and became interested in them and talked to us about Malcolm, about Elijah Muhammad and what they were trying to do, and persuaded us on one Sunday afternoon. Well, he'd been talking to us, but after the Harlem thing, his invitation to go to the mosque one Sunday afternoon and listen to Malcolm X, we decided to accept it. So the first time I actually saw him was in the mosque in Harlem one Sunday afternoon as he preached one of his sermons. It was, of course, a long-winded sermon, but every minute of it was interesting, bubbling, full of excitement and stings, and his capacity to rip the hide off everybody within sight, was beautiful. He said, I can smell the hog on you, He was a master at putting you at a total disadvantage, And he described how we, as black folks, smelled. He described how we looked. He described how we felt. And then he described what caused us to feel that way. The chains of slavery are still in your minds and in your heads, and you look at the white man and you love him. That's what you do. You hate the fact that he let you go from slavery. You want to go back there, But no, the Honorable Elijah Muhammad is here now, and we're going to change all that. The righteous black man is on the scene, and we're not going to be satisfied with you and your shucking and jiving. The time has come. I was impressed by the man. I wasn't converted. I knew a trick or two myself, but I was impressed with him.
Now, later when you got to know him, you invited him up to your home to introduce him to others, because I imagine there was a lot of curiosity, like your curiosity, about who this was, what this was about, and the kind of impact it was having on people. Can you describe to me that first time?
Yes.
Or an occasion?
Yes. Malcolm, as I said before, it created a lot of excitement in the black community. But also we were aware or felt that it was somewhat dangerous to be too closely associated to Malcolm. He was saying some pretty rough things, particularly about whites, and those of us who wanted to keep peace with the white world, some of us, had our jobs out in the white community, we didn't really want to get too close to Malcolm. Also, you must remember that in the 50s, during the red baiting period, everybody had learned to be a little wary of everybody else. 10-foot poles were the style of social intercourse in those days. So, but I did have friends who asked me, say, hey, man, we saw pictures of you and Ruby with Malcolm X. What's that all about? And we couldn't answer. We talked to our brother-in-law, but he didn't, he wasn't a scholar. He just knew Malcolm and admired him greatly. And we had gone to the mosque to the restaurant at the mosque and had met him for lunch and discussed various things and were impressed with him. And we'd ask him questions, and we said, hey, a lot of people, want to know what you really are about, but they're afraid to come to the restaurant or to the mosque, but they're still curious. And he jumped at that. Nothing pleased him more than going out, to proselytize and to convert. He was a missionary of the first water, and any opportunity he had to talk to anybody, he grabbed it. So we invited him to come out to our house in Mount Vernon one afternoon. He came, and he brought with him Herbert Muhammad, who had his camera and went around taking pictures. And Sidney Poitier was there, John O'Killens was there, Lonnie Satin and his wife Tina were there, and a few other people. And we sat down and said, hey, Malcolm, now look, brother, we understand the game. You're going around shaking up white folks. Okay, we understand that. But what's your program for black folks? What's your economic program? Is everybody going to have to become a black Muslim in order to share in this kingdom? I mean, are you really convinced that 6 or 7 states in the South would be viable? I mean, is that where you really are going? Come on, level. Ain't nobody listening. The cameras are not here. Television is not here. Come on.
We got to roll out. We're going to have to pick that up.
Okay.
All right.